keeps us small. It keeps us small. Someday we'll write a song, people sing along.
So it's Morton, the two-sec, and Sean Wilson. On the two-sec, not very happy. Seems to be pushed out there, so drama. Two-sec, very annoyed indeed. And he's going to need to be restrained. Well, I wonder what you made of that, obviously. Some riders here now. Wilson's getting involved.
Second leg here at a packed Wimborne Road, and Chris Harris has just made a belting start off gate number 2. Oh, he's gone down!
Oh, Lewis Bridger just ridden straight over the back of Chris Harris.
Holder in red, he's coming up the inside. Chris Holder for pole. Harris closes the door. Holder's trying the inside. The Elite League title's on the line. Going down to turn 3 and 4. Sensational Speedway. And now here comes Harris for more. Holder has the lead. Down to the line. Whoa!
Speedway race that is. An incredible Speedway once again.
Banna där för att han satt åt honom där ute.
Att han inte trängd där, eller?
Oj, han är riktigt upprörd. Men det är... Han försöker köra på.
Han åker och jagar. Och titta varje han kör på.
Oj, oj, oj.
Oj, vad är det som händer?
Nej.
Tuva. Och sen är det kampvild kuggning mellan Grigori Lagota.
Se Fredrik går ut ganska långt med Jason, och Jason får all det där materialet och sprayet på oss, och det stannar han helt och hållet. Du ser, han tappar all hastighet där, Jason. Försöker försvara sig, han ser inte riktigt, och Andreas kör ju rätt in i...
Raz, ale to Chris Holder w kasku niebieskim, no totalnie bez głowy. Widzimy ten atak. Tak, Krzysztof Kasprzak pierwszy został potrącony i później, no chcąc nie chcąc, musiał uderzyć w Chrisa Harrisa.
Świetnie! Krzysztof Kasprzak, ależ to była akcja! Oni sobie, ależ Kasprzak jedzie, fatalna historia! Wbił się, nie zdążył zeskoczyć. Patrzmy, co dzieje się z Krzysztofem, który tutaj był napędzony strasznie, a tutaj, no właśnie, wjechał w kolejne, tutaj uderzył plecami.
Zrobił Scott Nichols, ale jedno, co możemy powiedzieć Emilowi, to to, że to jest Speedway i tak się jeździ w Grand Prix, i myślę, że tutaj Emil nie powinien mieć do Nicholsa pretensji. O proszę, jaka wymiana uprzejmości, no niepotrzebne to jest, proszę, wywieziony teraz w bandę, Emil Sajfudinow, kopnął Nichols jego motocykl, kopią się, no nie, proszę państwa, tego już... Sebastian Ułamek, no bo jedzie znakomicie, Sajfudinow wyprzedził teraz Nicholsa, nie wyprzedził, wypycha Rosjanina na zewnątrz.
Co zrobił Wofinden? Patrzymy, ależ teraz i wypadek, straszny motocykl na trybunach, uciekają tam kibice, ależ tragedia.
Kiedy silnik wypadł z ramy, ale takiej historii jeszcze nie widziałem nigdy. Myślę, że
Coś nieprawdopodobnego. Ja byłem świadkiem takiej sytuacji, muszę ci powiedzieć.
cały...
Furmanka z węglem, tak ominęła, jaka fatalna Adrian Miedziński. Zostawił tutaj Emilowi tak, że można było...
którym wszyscy słyszeliśmy kilka dni temu ze startu najlepiej Aleksandr Łokta. Oj.
Na wejściu, do czego został zmuszony w tym momencie.
Odjechał Łoktajew daleko od krawężnika.
Tak, został po prostu wypchnięty przez Aleksandra Łoktajewa.
Unbelievable, 74 people at the same time. It's going to be a big one. This is tonight, boys. So we'll,
Bardziej ucierpiał, wjeżdża tutaj pod Słoweńca, no i wysadzony tutaj, wykatapultowany. Całe szczęście, że uderzyłem o Jasonie Krampie. Ależ tam jest teraz sytuacja. Nicky Pedersen, będzie walka, kopnął Mateja Żagara. Tutaj jeszcze jakieś doczynienia, dogrywkę w boksie, ale są tam panie, więc obyczaje, miejmy nadzieję, zostaną... O, jesteś... Bardzo dużo słów na F, ktoś tam jest popychany, ktoś popycha Żagara, Crystal Gardel prowokuje Pedersen. Wiesz co, powiem ci, Jacek...
Pedersen och Karlsson, de körde på varandra och vem åker dit på det där?
with word, it'll get bigger in a second. No, I'll just call him. What time are we going to call him?
Och så är det lite psykningar. Klassiska Nicky Pedersen psykningar på Chris Holler som håller sig kall.
Hang on, because we're going to start a show now, so...
Och nu börjar de att knuffas
When you're
också.
introducing it, I'll go back and when we got all the...
Holler visar att han tänker inte ta vad som helst. Och det är boxning där nere nu när en mekaniker...
To the Speedway Tavern, enjoy the show. Welcome to the Speedway Tavern. What do you need to know? Have a drink, have your say. All opinions here today. Welcome to the Speedway Tavern. Enjoy your stay. Michael, Matt, and Chris are here today. Welcome to the Speedway Tavern. Come and have your say.
I couldn't help but feel the sadness and despair falling over Perry Bar last night. This was in part due to the performance of the team, and for the first time, Liam Carr except him, there was very little fight. Although Lane Coupit did try, but going so wide even Thomas Peache would have been covering his face. In other news, we now know who is playing whom in the Premiership, and I think we're in for some good matches. But as a Brummie fan, there is only one topic of conversation. What will happen next season? Only in Birmingham Speedway. The band? Have they packed up and gone? Did you forget to pay them again?
That was abrupt.
Did you forget to pay the band again, for goodness sake? Well, Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Speedway Tavern. In the studio tonight, we have young Mr. Buck.
Good evening.
We have old Mr. Brown.
Good evening.
And we have ancient GA.
I wonder what you were going to say then.
Yeah, well, sorry to disappoint you. Hopefully, we will have on the phone, in the studio on the phone, in a few moments, Mr. John Chaplin, author of such books as Speedway, The Greatest Moments, Speedway Legends, Ove Fundin, Ivan Major, and Tom Farndon, the greatest Speedway rider of them all. That's some claim, isn't it?
That's right. And of course, John Chaplin, a Brummies fan. So
yes, so we'll be chatting to him hopefully in a few moments, and I will ask him about, why does he consider that Tom Farndon is the greatest Speedway rider of them all. I have to confess, I know very little about Tom Farndon.
1930s, I think Tom Farndon was.
Well, that would be. So that's more Webby's era then. Okay. He's not even listening.
No.
We can say what we like. Right. Well.
We usually do.
Where do we start? You was at last night's match.
I was, yes.
Pretty poor fare, wasn't it?
It was
really?
very disappointing.
I mean, disappointing to lose, obviously, but to lose in that fashion.
Well, to be honest, when I got to the stadium, it just didn't felt like there was sort of a air of resignation about the whole thing. It was always going to be a huge meeting, and unfortunately, I think a lot of the Brummies riders rode as if they had a massive weight on the shoulders. Kent, obviously, got to give credit to Kent; they were excellent. They came here, they came to Birmingham, they did a very professional job, and they got a win that probably will be enough to get them in the top four now.
I would think so. I would hope so. They're a nice little side.
They do look the favourites, and they could, if they don't win it themselves, they could be a real spoiler to somebody's chances in the semi-finals.
I think they've got a chance. I mean, everybody would say that Bellevue is the favourites for obvious reasons, but they've had a few battles this year, Bellevue and Kent.
Yeah.
They've had some close battles, so I don't think.
Absolutely, yeah. So
let's put it this way: I don't think Bellevue will be choosing Kent.
No, I don't think they will. But
so.
But
we'll leave them.
Absolutely, yeah. But in terms of Birmingham, I would probably say it was the poorest performance I've seen from a Birmingham team in about 3 years. Definitely in the National League era.
Yeah, I think.
Because I think that's one thing you've never been able to criticise the Brummies for, and that's
trying.
Not really.
Well,
but
I don't think you can criticise Lane Coupit for not trying. I think you can criticise him for being over optimistic as far as the width of the track is concerned, and but at least he was giving it a go.
That's right. So,
but yeah, well, I mean, let's just go through the team, and I don't like being critical of. We're talking about teenagers, talking about very young riders, particularly in the case of. Taylor Hampshire, but his form compared to when he first joined the Brummies, it was like a breath of fresh air.
A month ago he was flying, wasn't he?
He was getting double figures
home and away.
Yeah.
I think that meeting at Bellevue was 5 successive engine failures. He hasn't been the same since then, has he?
No, he hasn't. Whether that's confidence or engine, I felt like it was engine last night, to be honest. It wasn't pulling him to the first corner at all.
Yeah. It was a real shame because it was really set up last night to be a really good meeting.
Yeah.
I think Kent probably were always slight favourites because they came into the meeting in good form.
So.
But I thought it would probably be similar to the Bellevue meeting where it would go down to the last heat.
It would have been nice. That would have been a good.
It would have been good for the.
Do you think that the Bellevue meeting, losing that, not stuffing out the side a little bit, I think it deflated the crowd as well.
I think it did a little bit. I think Bellevue always looked fairly comfortable in that meeting. I think it would have been fantastic for the Brummies to have nicked it at the end, but I think it was the fair result. Eventually.
Yeah, I think so.
But I mean, Bellevue have been outstanding this season.
They're doing what we did last year, pretty much.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, when Graham Drew was on the show earlier before the start of the season, he said that he felt they were the big danger in the race for the National League this season, and he's been proved right. Whether they'll win the playoffs, difficult one, I think, because I think it's very, very open this season,
Well,
which is good for the National League, I think, after the last 2 seasons, to be fair.
Well, I think Kent have certainly made people sit up and notice.
Yeah,
you know,
that's right.
What's more worrying for me at the moment is the thought that Cradley could finish in front of us. Not happy about that. That doesn't feel right.
That's right. They still can't beat Birmingham.
They still can't beat Birmingham. Well, let's not say that. We have got one more match.
That's against the net.
That's good. We'll talk about that in a moment. That's going to be interesting. What's happening?
Apologies, sorry.
Sorry, was Liam Carr still going around?
Yeah. fat fingers.
More like Taylor Hampshire still going around. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say about last night. I think there was something else on people's mind a little bit more than the meeting, wasn't there? That's the main topic of conversation I kept hearing was, you know, who's taking over. And it just, when I read stuff on the different forums and so on now, it all feels very doom and gloom. People don't seem to believe that there is somebody to take over. And I can sort of understand that because of what's happened previously with takeovers at Birmingham. We haven't exactly been lucky in that side of things. But, you know, on a positive note, you have got Graham Drury saying things like, he believes it's when somebody takes over, not if somebody takes over. And some of you may not be aware that Graham Drury and Denise Drury, every year they do a little sort of thank you for all the staff, because most of the staff do it voluntarily for no money. And so they do a little thank you after the meeting, and last night's thank you to all the staff, and we all went up to one of the hospitality suites, and they did us a rather nice curry.
Listen to him here. So.
Well, don't feel too good about it. I couldn't actually eat any of it because I'm a vegetarian, but that's another story.
I thought you were going to say it came back afterwards.
Graham gave a little speech, and I don't think he'll mind me repeating some of the things that he said, which was we're talking essentially about, you know, who's taking over next year. And he said obviously he can't say anything. He doesn't, you know, there isn't. But when there is news, you know, it will be going through the proper channels. But he reiterated the line of it. He feels he's absolutely certain it's when and not if. Mm-hmm. And he also said a little thing to us as staff members, which I thought was quite positive, which was he thanked us all for the work that we'd done, and that he would ask us to give the same commitment to whoever it is that takes over. I felt quite a positive statement. So there we go.
No. Obviously, I suppose he's got to say that, hasn't he? Because he's got to, you know, he can't really spread negative vibes around.
I think that was perhaps a step further than he needed to go.
Probably was, but to be fair,
maybe. So, well, that's what I choose to think anyway. So, trying to be.
But I mean, you listen. You're not going to hear any news, I don't think, until after the season's finished.
Mm.
They're not going to. Tony Moores, whether he's in discussions with people or not, he's not going to make things public until.
Well, I wonder about that, because it would seem to me, if they have news and if they have got an idea and if they do know, that the best time to announce it would surely be at the farewell meeting.
It may well be, you never know.
Particularly as it's going to put bums on seats. If he announces in the press that there will be an announcement at the farewell meeting about who's taking over, that's going to put bums on seats, isn't it?
It might be a clever way of doing it, I suppose, if you want to try and get a big crowd.
I've got no insider knowledge on this, by the way. It's just me. You know, it's what happens when there's a vacuum, isn't it? You try to work out things. Talking about that meeting, actually, I think we'll talk about that later, because we want to have a chat with Mr. John Chaplin in a few moments. But before we do that...
Just before that, Tano says, I'm pretty sure something is sorted for next season, which is basically what you were saying anyway. So.
Well, I'm hopeful. I think I'm sort of more in the... I'm not sure, but I'm hopeful. That, you know, I think there will be Birmingham Speedway next year. And we was talking before we came on air, wasn't we, about where we would like Birmingham Speedway to be racing next year. And I'd be lovely to hear everybody's opinions on that. Where would you like Birmingham Speedway to be racing next year? By that I don't mean at Cradley Heath
or at Leicester or at Glasgow.
No, which division? I mean, you want them in second tier, don't you?
I think I'd like to see the Brummies back in the second tier, because I think there's unfinished business in the championship for the Brummies.
It'd be quite a nice progression, wouldn't it? We've done the National League. Let's go. Let's take care of the Premier League. Listen to me. I don't even think we've got a team next year.
Yeah.
But I agree. There is unfinished business in the Premier League.
And to be honest, as the novelty worn off with National League,
League, and I said Premier League and it's Championship, isn't it? I do apologise. We've seen that. I think that the problem for us in National League, which we've harped on about before, is this business of not being able to own your own assets. So it just doesn't feel like you're creating anything.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like you're building anything. It sort of feels a little bit pointless, really.
You're just creating something for other people to then benefit from.
Yeah. So I think that needs to be sorted. If we are to stop in the National League, then that's something that needs to be addressed. And you think there are not most of the clubs in the National League now. There is, with the exception of Bellevue, I think, are standalone teams
That's
now.
right.
So the only team that can actually benefit from being in the National League
is Bellevue,
and that feels just feels wrong.
That's it. I mean, that's how clubs like Buxton have survived, isn't it? By developing their own rides and then selling them with a profit.
Mm.
But it's sort of
called
can't do it now.
Capitalism.
That's right.
So anyway, that's a by the by. So we would love to know what division you think Birmingham should be riding in next year. You don't have to be a Brummie supporter to give your opinion. And we'd also like to hear from Swindon fans and from Bellevue fans and from Wolverhampton fans and I suppose Poole fans. Because those are the four teams that are going to be contesting the playoffs in the Premiership.
That's right. We'll talk about that a bit later on, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So.
You've made a prediction.
I have made a prediction. Yeah.
Don't like it.
I don't like it either, to be honest. But
okay, so we'll have some
20 past.
Okay. We're going to go to him at 20 past. Okay, we'll carry on for a little bit then. So let's talk a little bit about Wolverhampton versus Swindon. You sort of trounced them, didn't you?
Did a little bit, yeah. It was. Peter Adams has still said that there's room for improvement going into the playoffs. I mean, we made a very strong start to the meeting on Monday and ended up running out fairly convincing winners, 52-38. Whether Swindon were going at full pelt, I'm not so sure, to be honest. I mean, they'd obviously already done enough to get top spot.
That's a dangerous game to play.
It is a dangerous game. I think they played that game in 2009 and it came back and bit them. But they were disappointing on Monday. It wasn't. When I got that Monmouth on Monday, I was anticipating a really good meeting between two good sides. It was disappointing. There was a good race in the first heat with Freddie Lindgren and Jason Doyle, which that looked like it set it up for a really good meeting. But after that, it was disappointing. Jason Doyle wasn't particularly impressive.
He doesn't like the Wolverhampton.
Track, to be honest. It's a track he's done okay on in the past. I think he had some decent meetings there when he had that season with the Brummies. But really, it was a disappointing performance from Swindon. Tobias Muslett rode pretty well, I thought. Obviously back at Wolves for the first time since he's one season with us in 2015, and he's definitely shown signs that he's improved as a rider. I think it's benefited him going to Swindon actually, because it's a track that suits him a lot better than Wolverhampton ever did. And for Swindon, Nick Morris was probably the pick of their riders as well. He's really impressed me on the times I've seen him this season, and he looks like he's developing into quite a classy little rider.
Yeah.
So it was a fairly straightforward win. Obviously, the second meeting against Kings Lynn was always going to be a formality, and Kings Lynn ending up with both of their two reserves getting injured in the second heat as well, which meant they were down to 5 riders, and
with the two being the reserves, that would have meant that they can't replace it.
That's right. It was a difficult condition. I mean, it seems to be everything Kings Lynn touch at the moment seems to go wrong, doesn't it? and it was a real shame. You know, Kingsley, a great club, and I think a lot of it's probably self-inflicted, to be fair, but you do feel sorry for the Kings Lynn fans. And he finished 48-24, and really, had he not been for a really good race from Robert Lambert to get a double points ride in his last ride of the night, Kingsley wouldn't have even got to 20 points.
Ding! Oh, sorry. Hey, that rings a bell.
Oh,
ding dong.
Yeah, we've got a few things on the shout box that we need to. Right, so Tomo said he's pretty sure something is sorted for next season, otherwise there will be more publicity trying to sell it. Possibly. That's
right.
Yeah, I can see where he's going with that. Brian Buck, do we know who this Brian Buck is?
Never heard of him.
Never heard of him.
Sorry, Dave.
Says there's an additional meeting at Perry Bar, which is Wednesday, the September the 27th, Cradley Heath versus Bellevue Knockout Cup semi-final. I think we should all go to that and support Bellevue.
Why not?
Yeah. Second leg. Also, the Brummies are away at Kent in a challenge match on Monday, the 18th of September. So that's giving the lads a few more rides. I guess that gives Kent a bit of a practice as well.
Yeah, that's it. So.
And Thomas says Wolves will win the playoffs now. Riss is starting to get his form back.
He's riding well, to be fair. He's come back very well from his injury. Good signs as well for Sam Masters, who won his first 3 rides on Monday as well. So
we need to talk about this, because we've got the situation where probably Kent is the team in form in the National League, in 4th place in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Wolverhampton, possibly the form team all of a sudden, although you seem to think Poole is the form team. But Poole are in 4th place.
Yeah.
Now, last year, as a Brummie fan, we was finishing first. I was mortified that Eastbourne could win the league, and it felt wrong.
Yeah.
How does it feel with the boot on the other foot, where it's actually you're in 3rd place? And
well, we finished 3rd last season, so
yeah.
And obviously beat Poole in the semi-finals, and then obviously went on to beat Bellevue in the final. In fact, all of the playoffs that we've been in, we've never finished top of the league. Even when we won it in 2002 and 2009,
so
we finished second.
How do you feel about that? I mean, because I'm guessing that, I think I'm right in saying in conversations we had previously that you feel it should be first past the post. Basically, it should be the league champions.
It would be nice. I think the team that finishes top of the season should get something. I mean, it's a long, hard season, and of course you want to sort of have some reward from it at the end.
I agree.
I guess really with the players, as I've said before, if you get to them, and they're really good money spinners at the end of the season, because you're going to get a good crowd for them.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I think, we won that last year. That was a fantastic feeling when we won it in the playoffs. I think that's, you can't beat that feeling. But but perhaps that's why the Knockout Cup isn't so well supported now, because you get that feeling in the playoffs. You get that knockout. I don't know. It's interesting. Bewley's a big miss, and
they will struggle to replace him.
Is he injured?
Yes, he is. He obviously had
a
groin injury, which is quite painful. Yes.
Yeah.
So, he'll be a big miss, because
my eyes are watering.
He's had a terrific season, hasn't he, Dan Bewley? He's really shown
he's
signs
shot
he's
on
be
from
a very
last
good
year.
rider.
We thought he was a good rider last year, but all of a sudden, he's added being able to get past riders to his.
I think
criticism.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, you look at the playoffs now. I mean, Wolves and Poole obviously going into the playoffs in form. Bellevue, I think, probably maybe the playoffs has come at the wrong time for them.
Yeah.
But all will be revealed, of course, in the next few weeks.
Yeah, so Monday it's Swindon.
It's Poole Swindon.
The
first leg. And the first leg of the other playoff is the week after up at Bellevue.
All right, well. I think we'll come back to that in a moment.
We will come back to that, yeah.
And we have in the studio, I hope, fingers crossed, if all the technology works, Mr. John Chaplin. Are you there, John?
I certainly am, yes.
Fantastic. Is that all working? Brilliant.
Good, yeah.
Brilliant. Hello, John. It's good of you to come on.
I'm very flattered to be asked, actually.
We'll take anybody, to be fair. But
well, you're dragging the barrel here, anyway.
No, scraping the
barrel
scrapings with my mate over here. But anyway, I wanted to ask you, get right. You've written quite a few books, but the one that sort of takes my eye a little bit is the title Tom Farndon, the greatest speedway rider of them all. Why was
really? Really? Do you have a copy of that?
We haven't got it with us, unfortunately.
No.
But yeah, I was just looking at
what fascinated you about that?
Well, just it's quite a statement, isn't it? The greatest
Yes, it
speedway
is.
rider of them all. So
I'll let you into a secret. I can write about Speedway, and I love writing about Speedway, and I've done it for 60 years. But for the life of me, I can't get decent titles for books. And I didn't choose that. I did it in collaboration with Norman Jacobs, I don't know whether you know. It was a period of Speedway history that absolutely fascinated me, because this man, Tom Farndon, I don't know whether any of the people who are listening, ancient and modern, know anything about him. But he's a Midlander. He came from Coventry.
Okay.
And he became the best Speedway rider in the world. He really did. He was at the top of his game and the top of his profession. And he went from Coventry down to Crystal Palace, and then he ended up at New Cross. And in 1935, he was undoubtedly the equivalent of a world champion. He was the best Speedway rider in the world.
Right.
And the night before the big competition then at Wembley was the Star Championship.
Right, yes, I remember.
And the night before he and some of the big stars were due to ride in that, he was in a very unimportant race in the second half at New Cross, and he and his captain Ron Johnson had an accident, and Tom never recovered. He died in 1935. And if you can imagine the outpouring of grief for Elvis Presley now, that is the sort of grief that Tom Farndon attracted. I mean, there are hundreds of, mostly women, I must say, who camped outside the hospital where he was fighting for life. The local bus driver stopped to give the passengers an update on his condition, and it was the most incredible outcome, for a Speedway rider. But at the time, you've got to remember, Speedway riders were the soccer stars of the day and earning the big money.
Yeah.
They were also, huge personalities.
Yeah, I mean, I have seen pictures from that sort of era at Birmingham, and the crowds were just unbelievable. Now, I think I'm right in saying, this is just something that's just occurred to me, so if I've got it wrong, Matt will kick me, don't worry about that. So there's been quite a few books written. I mean, you've written a book about Ove Funding and about Ivan Major. Am I right in thinking that nobody's actually written a book about Graham Warren? Except Graham Warren. Graham Warren wrote a book, I think it was called Speedway and Me, way back in, it was like 49 or 50. And I think it was published by Echo Publications, the magazine of the day, the Speedway magazine of the day, run by a man called Eric Linden. So is he a character that you would have ever been tempted to write about?
Oh, Graham, yes. I mean, he was one of my all-time heroes. And funnily enough, I was in touch with his son only this week. Because I want to do a profile of Arthur Payne.
Okay.
If any of the fans out there remember Arthur Payne riding for Birmingham.
Yeah.
And I know Mark Warren, Graham's son, or one of Graham's sons, is in touch with Arthur. He's going to help me with it.
Oh, look forward
yes, Graham was, he was fabulous. You probably know, don't you, that I've been a lifelong Birmingham fan.
I have been told, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I saw my first Speedway was seen at Birmingham, at Perry Bar, at the old stadium, in 1946. And, of course, Graham came along a couple of years later and set the whole place on fire. He was so fantastic. And yes, it would be great to write a book about Graham Warren. I'm not sure whether I could interest, to be honest, a publisher to do it. Because they tend to say, well, I've tried this before. The subject is too narrow. You know, you've got to have a wider appeal.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, we all know Graham. In fact, I contribute to the Graham Warren Trophy every year that's given out at Birmingham.
Yeah, you're speaking to a fellow contributor here. So.
Yeah, it would be wonderful. Yeah, you know, whether it be feasibly successful as a publishing enterprise, I don't know.
We'll have to see if we can come up with something.
Yeah.
We'll have to see if we can come up with something. Right,
I mean,
okay.
I have a fantastic pictorial library of Graham, and I've always had the cooperation of his son, who sent me lots of other pictures that people have never seen. For instance, there was one he sent me just the other day of Graham's first big win, he called it, in Bathurst in 1947.
Right.
He's dressed in like a knight's shining armour. It was obviously a joke trophy, but that's what he was dressed. He was dressed as a knight.
So you've been, as you said, you've been watching Speedway since 1945. Was that right?
46. 46.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'd be interested for you to say what was the best era of Speedway.
Well, I think the people of my age who were fortunate enough to see Speedway at that time, when it started again just after the war in 1946, it was only 20 years old, the sport was then, and it was still more or less in its infancy. And it was I never saw Speedway before the war, obviously, because I was too young, but I think that era was the nearest we got to the origins of Speedway, and it was a very romantic era. I mean, all the tracks were black cinders, and it was a most... anyway, it captured my imagination as a boy, a young teenager, you know, and all the guys there, all the men who rode were my heroes. It was a remarkable time, and the few years after that, up until about 1949-50, were the most incredible years for speedway racing, because people like 10 million people paid to go and see it, and it was a serious contender for the best sport in the country after football.
Yeah, that was always said, wasn't it? In that
yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible.
Well, wouldn't it be lovely to see that again?
Fantastic. Half of that would be nice.
Fantastic. You say you've seen pictures of the old Perry Bar crowds.
Yes,
absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, I've been in that stadium when you couldn't fall down. It was particularly, I'm thinking of the 1949 Match Race Championship Challenge between Graham and Jack Parker. I mean, there were 43,000 people in that stadium.
Yeah.
It was, the atmosphere was incredible. It was really fantastic.
We could have done with last 1% of that last night.
What?
The thing that brought that home to me the most, actually, about the crowds and the popularity of Speedway in those days, was a picture I saw. Again, we're talking about Graham Warren when he got married.
I was just going to bring that up.
Yes, we've seen that.
I mean, he stopped the centre of Birmingham.
Stopped the centre of Birmingham. I mean, you know, even a football player wouldn't do that.
It's none of the current ones.
No, that was an incredible morning. Really was.
So I mean, I'm just thinking it would be nice if because there are people. I mean, I never saw Graham Warren ride. My father never stops talking about it.
I think Graham, for me, was the most exciting speedway rider on a bike that I've ever seen. I've seen most of the big names. You know, most of the idols. You know, from pre-war big stars like Jack Parker and Vic Duggan. And he's in a different category to a rider called Oliver Hart, who was a sort of last of the leg trailers.
Right.
But Graham was so exciting. You know, he could put the bike where he wanted it, and it didn't matter if it rained and the track was unrideable. You know, like nowadays the boys just won't tackle it, will they? But he ploughed through everything.
Yeah.
and he'd win doing it too.
Well, yeah. Well, there you go. So we want a book about Graham Warren. That's
it would be good, wouldn't it?
Okay.
Benjamin Barker. Ben, hello, Ben. He's just said was there a Graham Warren trophy? I'm sure.
I presented it to Ben Barker.
Yes, there was, Ben. Yes, you did win it, and it continues to this day. It's good to have you on the show, mate. Right.
Yeah, I should.
So I'm going to go through some of your books.
Right.
So we got Speedway: The Greatest Moments.
Yeah.
So, which obviously brings me to the obvious question: what was your greatest moment in Speedway?
My greatest moment, oh dear, I think really it was the 1948 Speedway Rider Championship final at Wembley, when Vic Duggan won it, because Vic Duggan has such a phenomenal record, and he was so neat and tidy and brilliant at what he did. I mean, he was virtually unbeatable at one time, particularly in 1947. But the Parker brothers bamboozled him in the 1947 final, and he didn't win it when he should have done. But the following year he won it, and I was very impressionable. And not only, 90,000 people in Wembley Stadium to watch a Speedway meeting is an experience that no one will ever forget. Yeah. And the following, if you could imagine that every night of the week in London there was a world-class Speedway meeting on.
Mm.
The following night I went to Haringey to see him presented with the trophy in front of his home fans, and that was an incredibly charged, brilliant atmosphere as well. It was something I will never forget.
You've got us salivating here at the thought of...
I am comparing that with all the World Finals that I've ever seen. And I think that was really the one that had the most impression on me.
Fantastic. So, Speedway Legends is the next book that we've got. So, I think you might have already answered this, but who was your biggest Speedway legend?
Oh, Parker, Jack Parker was.
Okay.
Undoubtedly, yes, Parker, not only because of what he did on the track, but what he did off the track and what he did for the sport. I don't know whether you know, but I've just interviewed his son, John, about life with his father. And that will be in the next magazine, Speedway Classic magazine. But Parker was the supreme egotist, really. I mean, I've told this story many times before that I once had I was naive enough once to ask Jack who he thought was the greatest rider in the world. And he put his hand on his heart and he said, well, modesty forbids. Now that was Parker. He got the biggest ego there was, and he had supreme confidence in his own ability.
Mm.
But off the track, he virtually ran the sport from the rider's point of view, and he was a huge diplomat when it came to dealing with the promoters. And of course, you probably know that his record of taking international teams out to Australia year after year after year kept the sport, I suppose, going there as well.
Mm.
So that's why it was my idol. Yes.
Fantastic. So you also wrote a book about Ove funding.
Yeah, and that was what I call a proper book.
Right. Okay.
All right. Okay.
That was the book I really wanted to write.
Right.
I was very fortunate because I was able to go out and stay with him at his home in France, spend a week with him, talking to him, and as a matter of fact, he's a very hard man, Ove is, because he wouldn't sit down and talk to you over the table, really. What he wanted to do was get up and walk in the hills, and I had to do that and talk to him, keep up with him, day after day after day. And of course, he opened up all his personal files and photographs to me.
Wow.
And the beauty of that was, I was able to get a piece written for the book from his first wife. You know, he's had 3 wives.
I didn't, but
he had 3 wives, and he's got 8 children.
Wow.
And she wrote a piece
find time to write Speedway?
for the book. from her point of view on what it was like being married to Ovi, and she said it was like Mick Jagger.
Okay.
As far as the girls were concerned.
Right.
But no, I went everywhere and talked to loads of people about him, and they all opened up to tell the truth about Fundin, about how how determined and ruthless he was on the track.
I think all riders that get to that
level have to have a ruthless edge. I mean,
well, yeah, I've interviewed most of the world champions, and I found they all have the same sort of attitude to it. They must win. They hate losing. It's more or less a religion to them.
Yeah.
But I think Ovi stood out above all of them because there again, in the new book, Speedway at Full Throttle, I've got a very long piece about Ronnie Moore, and I don't know if anybody's seen this, but on YouTube there's a very good interview with Ronnie conducted by Barry Briggs. Now there's nobody better than Barry Briggs to interview Ronnie Moore, although Barry's not a particularly good interviewer, but they were best friends and they knew. And Ronnie opens up about all the people who he rode against and who helped him, and reveals that my old friend, my old idol Jack Parker, threatened to kill him at one point. You have to buy the book and find out.
Well, absolutely. I mean, and I will say to everybody, if you're interested in any of these books, and they are damn good reads, if you go to Amazon, you can get most of those on Amazon.
You can also, they're published by Holmesgrove in Somerset, and they've got a website if anybody's interested, www.holmesgrove.com. That's easy.
Brilliant. We'll get that put up on the shout box in a moment. I want to ask you about the next book that I've got, which is Ivan Major. Now, this is starting to come into my era now, so and I actually have to sort of express an interest in the fact that I actually met Ivan Major, and I found him to be a gentleman. Your thoughts on Ivan Major?
My thoughts on Ivan Major, well, Ivan was undoubtedly unique, and he elevated the sport into a new professional era, didn't he? He was super professional. Again, a very ruthless man on the track. And if you read the book, you'll understand the length he went to make sure not only him, but his team was successful as well, because the success of the team reflected on him. And so he had to have a say in who rode with him, in which team, and he got up to all sorts of dirty tricks to bamboozle the opposition.
I can actually
that book was an idea I borrowed from a book about James Hunt, the Formula One Grand Prix driver, in which the author went around and talked to people who knew him and raced against him and were openly honest about what they thought about him. I thought, boy, this is a really good concept. So I went and did the same. And I must tell you this, that Ivan suffers from dementia now and is in a home.
Yes.
You know that?
Yeah.
At one of the Veteran Speedway Riders' annual dinners, I knew Barry Briggs was in regular touch with Ivan, and I went to Barry and said, "How is Ivan?" And Barry rounded on me and accused me and my book on Ivan of pushing Ivan over the edge and into a home.
Oh dear.
So, which is totally ridiculous, because before we published the book, I promised Ivan, and I kept my promise to send him a disc of all the words I was going to publish.
Right.
Well before publication, and he had the opportunity to object to anything in it.
Right.
And he didn't. He didn't object to anything at all, which, in my opinion, elevates him in my estimation.
Well,
undoubtedly, one of the finest speedway riders there will ever be. I mean, I know Tony Ricardson won the World Championship as many times, and possibly carried the sport on from Ivan's datum, to what he did for it. but he didn't have the personality that Ivan's got. There again, you know, he's a fantastic personality.
How successful would Ivan have been in the Grand Prix series, do you think, John?
People always get, I mean, they say to me, well, would Blue Wilkinson have won a world championship if he'd ridden now?
Yeah.
Of course they would. I mean, if you're good in any era. And it's unfair to say, well, Bluey trailed his leg a bit and he rode in deep tracks and he didn't have the mechanical expertise that they have nowadays, or the motors, or they rode on different tyres. Doesn't matter. The quality will always come to the top.
That's
and
right.
I think he would have done, yes. I think he would have done because he wanted to. I watched Ivan's career, and when he wanted to win something, he won it. Without a doubt, you know, he set out to win. If he wasn't bothered about winning it, he didn't bother, but if he wanted to win, he would win it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it's quite well known as well about his rivalry with Cradley's Ivor Brown as well. I mean...
yeah, that didn't come out until later on, did it? The man I hated, he said.
Okay,
that was Ivor Brown.
John, thank you. I'm going to have to let you go in a moment, but I just want to ask you about one more thing, which is the Speedway Classic Mag. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how people can get hold of it?
Well, yeah. Do you know anything about the magazine I started called Vintage Speedway Magazine?
I'm afraid I know very little about that. I'm ashamed to say.
You know, I've written for various Speedway magazines over the years, and I didn't always get in the opinions that I wanted to convey. So with a colleague, I started up a magazine called Vintage Speedway Magazine, which ran for 10 years. And until it became a full-time job, because I was the only man on the editorial staff. And it became a bit too much for me, so I stepped down from then. And then Tony MacDonald, who runs, as you probably know, various DVDs and Backtrack magazine and what have you, he took it over and turned it into Classic, Speedway Classical magazine. So it's still going strong in a way.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, John, thank you very much once again for coming on the show tonight. It's been absolutely brilliant.
No problem. I'm just getting going.
Well, unfortunately, we're coming up towards the end of the show. But,
you're
by all means,
based, aren't you? I know that.
Yeah, but by all means, you are welcome on the show anytime. So
any time you would like to have me on, I'll always be happy to do so.
Fantastic. In fact,
thank you. Give my regards to all my Birmingham buddies, won't you?
I beg your pardon?
Give my regards to all my Birmingham buddies.
I will do. In fact, you've just done that yourself. So.
Okay, thank you very much for having me on.
John, might get back in touch with you a bit later. I've got a proposition for you. So just,
all right. Okay.
So, yeah. But thanks again for coming on the show, and take care. Good luck, mate.
Thanks very much, John.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Right. Wow. That was really interesting.
It was,
yeah.
Nice little trip down memory lane. So
we've got a few things coming up over on the shout box. So let me see. Alan Atherton saying he thinks that the Premiership will go Monday and Thursday championships, maybe Sunday and another day.
That's what seems to be being hinted to at the moment.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I know there's a lot of talk about that at the moment. Alan says, I think one home, one away and decent cup competitions is the way to go. Maybe 12 teams in the Premiership as well.
It would be nice to have more in the Premiership, I must admit. But whether that'll happen remains to be seen in the current climate.
And Ben Barker was saying a fixed night will work, but I think it will need to be Monday and Wednesday, as you will still need doubling up riders. And there are a few clubs in Championship that ride on a Thursday and none on a Wednesday. So, yeah, I mean, I think that, as you say, that seems to be what people are discussing, and we've been saying it for years. Finally catching up.
Oh, that's right. So
finally catching up.
I think, unfortunately, now they're in a position where they're starting to run out of alternatives to get around these things. It's
okay. There are some matches running tonight.
There are some.
We probably ought to have a look at them. Ipswich against Berwick, is it?
Yep, that's right. In the Premiership, in the Championship, It's currently only 5 heats gone because there's been a floodlight failure at Foxhall.
Forgot to put the money in the
latest
meter
update for
again.
that is they're good to go and they're just about to get started for Heat 6. It looks like they've been off for about 20-25 minutes. So,
Right.
but thankfully they've sorted that out. It's Ipswich 18, Berwick 12.
Okay, so
at the moment, and Birmingham interested, of course. Danny King's won his opening race. Rory Schlein and Nathan Greaves, of course, both riding with Wolves connections. Rory Schline's won his first race, and Nathan Greaves, good to see him back as well after his nasty spill on Monday night.
And the other
3
match is
points
the Isle of
from
Wight
2 rides.
versus Mildenhall, have I got that right?
In the National League, yeah. Let's just have a look at what's happening on the island. Of course, that meeting will probably have finished by now because that starts. I think their start time is 7 o'clock. So we'll just have a quick look at how things are going down there. Mildenhall, well, they could still get in the playoffs, but I think it's very, very, very unlikely now. They're going to have
It would
to.
be very unfair on Kent if they did.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. Well, we're with 2 more heats to go in that one, and it's looking like it's going to be a pretty hefty defeat for Mildenhall. It's the Isle of Wight 46. Mildenhall 32 with 2 heats to go, so Isle of Wight look home and hosed in that one.
Bad time they won something. So, Graham Darlington's come up with a suggestion for the way to go for Speedway, which is one big league with 18 teams, Wednesday to Saturday, 17 home, 17 away, National League on Sunday and Monday. Teams must have a National League reserves in the big league. Then 8 tracks run at top level on a Monday, giving 7 home, 7 away. Glasgow, Edinburgh, Bellevue, Wolves, Sheffield, Poole. It just seems a bit complicated and messy.
I think after what happened last time we had the one big league in the mid-90s, I don't think they'll do that again.
Yeah.
Surely we need to steer away from complicated.
Yeah, it's complicated enough anyway.
Yeah.
Come on, let's not make it any more complicated.
Could somebody pass me the official Speedway Tavern phone over, please? Thank you.
You may have the official Speedway Tavern phone.
Don't break it.
There it is. Oh.
Thank you.
Okay. Now I have got a really good idea, by the way, which I'll tell you all about later. I'm quite
unusual.
excited about this. Yeah, it is. Shall we have a look at the playoffs then? The championship.
Premiership playoffs.
The Premiership playoffs,
Yeah.
I beg your pardon.
Still can't get that, can you?
No.
By the
no.
time you have, they'll change them back.
Yeah,
again,
that's true. That's probably true. So we have got Swindon have chosen
Poole
to play against Poole. Now, you think that might be a bad move?
Well, I think Poole, in fairness, I think Swindon were probably always going to pick Poole because of the league positions.
Mm.
I don't think they were ever going to pick Wolves because they haven't got a particularly good record at Monmore Green. Bellevue as well. I mean, Bellevue could be fairly strong, although they're not in the best of forms. So I think maybe they made the choice a few weeks ago. I don't know whether it was Alan Rossiter's choice or whether he's gone by what his riders want to do. It's matter because there's a lot of Swindon riders who've got a good record against Poole. So, but that one starts on Monday, the first leg down at Wimborne Road. And then the following Monday is the.
Well, hold on before you go
okay.
further. I mean, I'm after a prediction because you came up with quite a statement before we went on air, which is that you said you thought Poole were going to win the thing.
Yes.
So therefore, you're saying that Swindon are going to get knocked out in the semi-finals.
I do, yeah. I think Poole will beat Swindon over 2 legs.
That's going to be interesting.
I wouldn't have said it a month ago. I mean, Poole were in disarray a month ago, weren't they? But they've suddenly found some form from somewhere, and they've probably got the strongest reserve in the league in Timo Larty. You never in a million years would you write Poole off because they've been in that position so many times before, and they've come back and taken the title. So.
Interesting. So Bellevue versus Wolverhampton.
That's right. Well, the first leg of that, we've chosen to go to Bellevue, which is a bit of a surprise. I was a little bit surprised when I heard that we'd chosen to have the away leg first because we've always. Well, we haven't got a particularly good record at Bellevue this season.
Right.
We've had a few quite hefty defeats there. In fairness, we haven't gone there when we've had a strong team.
So you're worried that the match could be over before you get it?
Well, not necessarily that, but we're going to have all of our riders firing on all cylinders. You certainly wouldn't like to be any further than 10 points behind, because Bellevue have got riders who do go well at Monmore Green. Although, of course, if they're without Dan Bewley, that does weaken them, I think. Because they won't be able to, I don't know whether they'll be able to go to reserve anywhere near as strong as Dan Bewley would perform. Kenneth Bier, never rely on Kenneth Bier in the playoffs.
No.
That's one thing for certain. So that could go either way. But I think at the moment I would fancy us to beat Bellevue over 2 legs, and possibly face Poole in the final.
That would be the final you'd want, I would have thought, as a Wolverhampton.
Well, I mean, we've already beaten Swindon in a playoff final, so I think we lost to Poole in 2004, I think, in the playoff final.
You've had a good record against Poole this year, haven't you?
Well, you say that, we've had 4 matches against them and only won one of them.
Oh,
so.
right, okay.
I mean, obviously, we've lost the 2 matches down there, although we've lost them by 2 points and 1 point.
Well, you'd settle for that.
Yeah, and of course, Paul, have already been to Monmore Green and won and pushed us very close the second time around. So that would be an intriguing final, Paul against Wolverhampton.
I think any of those.
You can make a case for any 4 of those clubs to win it.
I really think you could. I think it's going to be very, very exciting.
Yeah.
And then, of course, after all of that, we believe.
There's the relegation promotion playoffs.
The relegation promotion playoffs is going to happen.
That's right.
That's going to be.
Well, Leicester, of course, are there, so which is, I mean, it did look a while ago as if Kingdom possibly were going to snatch that bottom place off Leicester, but Leicester obviously not winning on Monday, getting a point, getting anything at Rye House on Mondays means they finish bottom, so it's who they will meet from the Championship, and I think possibly at the moment I would go for Sheffield.
Apologies, I know we're running out of time, but you just need to backtrack a bit because Graham doesn't agree with both of you two. He says it's not complicated. It's a simple big league where 8 tracks run at a higher level as well.
That sounds complicated.
It does sound complicated to me. Sorry, Graham.
Yeah, maybe it's just you two getting on.
It probably is us two.
Yeah, it probably is.
That sounds a bit like the pot calling the kettle black. But
and Alan Atherton says Bewley will be back.
Okay.
Whether he'll be fully fit is, of course,
he'll be talking in a high voice. He probably does anyway. He's that young. And isn't Timo Latte going up into the main body of the team? So he won't be the.
I don't know whether there's any changes at this stage.
I don't think
there are. I might be wrong. So
well, we'll find out, won't we? What happened to the young lad who used to be on the show?
No, it's okay, Tomo. I'm here. I'm still here, mate.
Actually, that's a pertinent question because.
You're about Joe, aren't you?
Yeah. Well, Joe, bless his cotton socks. He had his GCSEs this year, and so he decided. Good decision, in my opinion. He hasn't even been down to the Speedway. He's been concentrating on his studies.
Yeah.
Happy to report he got all of the exam results that he was after to be able to enable him to go to the sixth form college of his choice.
Fantastic.
So that's why he hasn't been around.
Great. Now you can concentrate on girls and alcohol.
Yes. Now the thing about that is that Joe probably won't be coming back as far as doing the interviews and so on because he's really going to be studying hard now, which leaves us with a bit of a hole in the pits. We need somebody to come and interview the riders. So if there's anybody out there that fancies it, really needs 2 people. Yep. You need somebody to operate the camera and somebody to do the interviews and so on.
Not necessarily at Birmingham.
Well, that is exactly what I was going to say. It would be nice to have some, if there is somebody that wants to do it at Birmingham, we can provide them with the equipment for doing that. However, actually all you need is a decent smartphone.
Yeah.
And so if you want to do that at your track, whether that be Swindon, whether that be Poole, I suppose we can say Cradley. Can we say Cradley?
Yep.
If you want to do that for us next season, and just let us know and drop it into our email.
Yeah, I'm going to put the email up.
And we'll put it on. We need it in what formats do we need it in?
MP3, but MP4 is okay.
MP3, MP4, but and we can probably point you in the right direction for how you.
Basically, send us a report in and we'll broadcast it.
Yeah, exactly.
Simple as that.
Yeah. Why didn't I just say that?
I don't know.
Okay. So, that would be really nice. I mean, obviously, we're looking for next season now as more than anything, but we will remind you. So we're looking for reporters, basically. It's a lot of fun. That's it. And the the show now is going from strength to strength as far as listeners are concerned. So the other thing that we want to say, if there's anybody out there that fancies sponsoring the show, get in touch.
Yeah.
And yeah, we'll put a package together for you. So okay, that's that. I'm looking at the time. Wow,
I know.
Can't believe that the time has gone. There's not a lot else to say.
There is, of course, a GP on Saturday.
I was just about to say there's a GP coming up
in Germany.
In Germany,
of course.
okay. Which you would presume Martin Smolinski will be riding.
He'll be riding in as a replacement for Greg, won't he? So
yeah.
So obviously Greg's out for the season, so. I'm trying to remember who won the German Grand Prix last year.
I'm trying to remember whether Ty Woffenden's got a good record at there. I'm not
there's
sure.
only been one Grand Prix there, so
right.
It's. But as I say, I mean that result in the last round, he's put himself right back in the hunt.
It's made it. It's quite an exciting GP series.
Let's have a look at how things go. How things looks at the moment with 4 rounds still to go, including Saturdays. Jason Doyle still leads on 97. With Magic Janowski on 94, Patrick Dudek 93, Ty Woffenden 89, Freddie Lindgren 87, and even Bart Smosley on 81, and Emil Sofudnoff on 79. You know, it would need a big turnaround, but they're not completely over it at the moment. So,
and as we witnessed last year with Jason Doyle,
yeah,
everybody thought he was sewn on for it at one point, but just anything can happen. So. Yeah, we'll be looking at that and we'll report on that next Thursday. I know there's no Brummies match. Might not be no Brummies. Oh God, sad thing to say. Might never be any more Brummies matches. Who knows?
Let's stay positive.
Say that.
Yeah. No, I'm trying to be positive. I'm going with 1 grand. I'm holding on to that when it's announced. So I'm holding on to that. But we will continue broadcasting because obviously we've got the little matter of playoffs coming up, and
that's right.
Who will be the Grand Prix champion?
And of course, if there's any news on Birmingham, we will be
absolutely
here to discuss it. So
no promises, but we're hoping to get somebody from Birmingham on the show after the last meeting. So look forward to that as well.
Yep.
So I think we'll wrap it up, folks. Thank you very much once again, everybody out there. We couldn't do this show without you. Take care. Good night.
Good night.
Have a good weekend.
Hello.